Portions of the following program may be pre-recorded.
Did you know that it's true? That's for me and for you. The world isn't at home.
Good morning, and welcome to Connections Radio Show, where we talk about ideas that matter. I'm glad you've made the connection and are with us today. I'm Lori Fitz, your host, and the goal of our show is to explore a wide range of topics that challenge us to see ourselves, our community, and the world around us, and get us thinking, get us talking, get us wondering, get us imagining, get us inspired to do a bit more because we've made the connection. Our topic today is reconnecting Rondo. And big thanks goes to Rick Bernardo, who helped pull this all together, our producer for this show. So big thank you to our friend Rick. And today we'll be focusing on the Reconnect Rondo Youth Council. And they have presented a new podcast series that just kicked off this week, Voices of Rondo. And it highlights youth voices on the history of systemic racism in American transportation policy. And this youth-driven podcast is featuring Twin Cities metro area high school students, and I have some of them here today. But before we introduce these wonderful, magnificent students that I'm looking forward to having a great conversation with, I'm going to introduce Scott Harold, who you have all heard on our show before. He is the CEO and founder of Rock the Cause Records. And Tim Hunt, who is supporting with public relations and just part of the team to make it happen and get it out there. So, Scott, I'm going to start with you. Tell us a little bit about you bringing this to Rick as an idea and why this is so important.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thank you, AM 950, for having these amazing, wonderful young people on here today. Sorry, I'm getting emotional. We have been working so hard at this podcast for 2 years, and it's been really an incredible experience to watch these young people grow, learn the history of Rondo and other communities like it that were destroyed by and displaced by transportation policy, but also develop the career skills that they're developing. So it's really been a beautiful effort with these young people, and I'm just so thankful and happy that we are here to share their voices today, because it's really about them today, and they are amazing.
And Tim, you just recently joined this group, right?
Yes. So my name is Tim Hunt. I'm the Marketing Communications Director for Reconnect Rondo, and I'm super excited to be a part of this project and walk alongside the students on this journey, because, you know, the youth voices matter, and it's super exciting to hear what the podcast is and what it's about, and just see the excitement of such an important topic that these the youth are leading. So it's really exciting.
And before we introduce the students, I have one more question for you.
Yes.
For those that might not know about what Reconnect Rondo is,
Yeah.
tell me just top line how important this is and what the end goal is of Reconnecting Rondo.
Yeah, so Reconnect Rondo really is a community-led organization. So Reconnect Rondo and Rondo as a whole, obviously, you know, the historic neighborhood. Really, we are focused on reinvigorating the historical Rondo neighborhood.
And that's in St. Paul.
That is in St. Paul.
And if you're going down 94,
Yep.
you're getting off on Dale.
Yep.
And that 94 cut the community of Rondo. Pretty much, if not in half, at least a third was lopped off in terms of the community. And that was done in the 50s, right?
Yep. And I mean, you got it right on the head. I-94 slashed through the historic Rondo neighborhood and displaced 80% of the African-American community that was in St. Paul. So, really did some displacement and damage to that historical Rondo neighborhood. And so Reconnect Rondo is all about reinvigorating that once vibrant African-American neighborhood.
And with that, I'd love to have you introduce.
Yes. Right. So they speak for themselves. So I'd love for the students that made it here to introduce themselves. So.
I'm Stone Williams. I'm a student, a senior at HSRA, the High School for Recording Arts, where we regularly work on the Voices of Rondo podcast, and I do editing and music production for the podcast.
And as I recall, you wrote some music.
Oh yeah, no, I actually do. I write my own music. That's Stone Williams. You can find me anywhere you'd like. Thank you so much. And
Absolutely, a little plug there. Erica.
Hi, everybody. My name is Erica Lee. I'm a senior at Brooklyn Center High School, and I'm a show host, narrative writer, researcher, and editor for the Reconnect Rondo Youth Council.
My name is Javier Soto. I also go to the High School for Recording Arts. I edit, I somewhat produce, and I'm also a co-host.
My name is Moises Soto Puente. I'm a senior at Brooklyn Center High School, and I'm one of the hosts. I'm an editor, write the script, and I research.
And to find this amazing podcast, you can go to reconnectrondo.com. And when you go to that, you can hit the news tab, or you can go to YouTube. And when you go to YouTube, you can have just Reconnect Rondo typed in, and you'll see these amazing students. I have been so privileged to be able to enjoy the podcast and then meet these incredible students. And I'm filled with joy to have you here today. I also love your perspectives. And I think it's really important that the youth perspective is allowed to have voice on Connections Radio here today. And what I'd love to start with is why was this important to you? Why did this mean so much to you to have this podcast be created? And for this, I'm going to start with Moises.
Throughout my life, there wasn't like any questioning of like highways, because like they're all around us, but like people never like question like how did they get there? Because back when I was like very young, I thought we discovered the highways and that we just like built around them, but that was not the case. Earlier this year, I stumbled upon the Reconnect Rondo program and started learning about the displacement of highways of communities, and that was the first time I've heard of that. And that's the testament to our education system. Anyways, it's important because it affected everyone, specifically African American communities all across the nation, not just in Rondo. So having youth voices on that will elevate it even more. That's why it's important.
Javier, tell me why it was important to you to work on this.
So I've lived in Rondo since I was 12, I think. But I wasn't really aware of all the history and like the cultural significance until I started going to the High School for Recording Arts, which is also in Rondo. And on my first day there, probably, is when I was introduced to the program from Scott. Not fully, but just kind of him telling me what it's about. And I hadn't realized just how in-depth it all was, and how sad just the story was. It's really devastating, everything that happened.
Urban renewal is something that you talk about in the podcast. And that quote of urban renewal was good for some and horrific for others.
Absolutely.
And having a highway go through the heart of a rich, thriving business community that was predominantly African American is a heartbreak. And a heartbreak then, and a heartbreak for generations that followed in terms of how many dollars were lost, generational changes that you all were able to talk about so well in your podcast. Erica, tell me why it was important to you.
So, first and foremost, I think that it's really dangerous how this country really does not want us to know history and what really happened. And so, you have like schools in states like banning books various places. That's the reason why I really took this, so that I can educate myself, because like I'm born and raised in Minnesota in the Twin Cities, and like the amount of times that I've driven down I-94 in my life, like I never knew about the history. I never knew about the pain and hardship that was caused to the people of Rondo and is still being enacted upon them. And so, yeah.
In the podcast, you share some sadness about moving away from Minneapolis, and that you had wanted to stay in your North Minneapolis, and you miss the culture of the North Minneapolis. If you want to share a little bit about
Exactly. That's another thing too. Like I feel like that also like added some like understanding. Like there's so many people who descend from Rondo that can't afford to stay there, and so they have to leave. And so I really was able to connect with that. And like it just makes me sad how I just think it's sad how so many Black and brown people have to leave their communities to chase safety and opportunities, and that just added a whole nother level of connection to this project for me.
Stone, you've recently joined the Rondo group, the Reconnect Rondo.
Yes, I have.
Tell me what it means to you and why it was important for you to be a part of this.
I think my experience with Reconnect Rondo kind of started just because I saw it as an opportunity to like use my media abilities and like my editing history to like just work with some of my friends on something. But after listening to the podcasts and like fully diving deep into it, I really got to understand the history of where I grew up. Similar to Javi, like I've been in Rondo since I was born and never understood really most of the events that take place, such as the gentrification that I've witnessed and just like seeing my neighbors who I really love just go away because they can't afford the place no more. And when you don't have an understanding of the actual negative causes of gentrification, you can be confused as to like, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? And I think it's just important that I work with you guys to understand more about the culture that I've been a part of this whole time, you know?
I'd like to have a part of the podcast be shared. I know we're towards the end of the segment, but I'd love to have that segment be shared, and then I'll say a few words after that before we go to break.
It happened in Rondo, and you could like see the impact that it had on the community and the individuals and their lives and their homes. And it happened across the country too, right? It was like this was an effort of, you know, building highways and of this so-called urban renewal across the U.S. to like, you know, encourage suburbanization and help, you know, ostensibly help cities, but actually destroy these communities like Rondo. And so this is a pattern that kind of recurs so often that we see has such a visceral impact in Rondo.
And that's just a snippet to get you excited about listening yourselves to this great podcast. Again, you can go and listen to Reconnecting Rondo by going to reconnectrondo.com, or you can go to the YouTube. Highly encourage going to the YouTube. Very easy to get to, Reconnect Rondo. It's a very moving podcast that also has some great videos that the students have worked on. Very informative, very thoughtful, and something that we should honor by honoring the voices of the young people and how they have brought this to us, and a way to look to the future. So we'll be right back. It only gets better. We're going to be talking more and more with these students and their vision for making change. Good morning and welcome back to Connections Radio Show, where we talk about ideas that matter. And this week we are talking about reconnecting Rondo, and I have some wonderful students to share the story of what they're doing as part of the Reconnect Rondo Youth Council in presenting a new podcast series, Voices of Rondo. Scott Harold, who is the CEO and founder of Rock the Cause Records, this has been a heart journey.
Yes.
For Scott in supporting this podcast and supporting where this goes. So tell me a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, in addition to the many hats I wear, I do teach the business of music and media at the High School for Recording Arts in St. Paul, which is an incredible school that is in Rondo. And we have some other teaching facilitators that are also High School for Recording Arts staff involved with this. But about 2 years ago, almost to the date, I got connected to this program through Keith Baker, who is the executive director of Reconnect Rondo, who had an idea for building an internship program and a paid workforce discovery program. And I thought, oh, this is amazing. You know, I was involved with students who helped SPNN and St. Paul Almanac make the Rondo Beyond the Pavement documentary. So this was something that felt second nature. And I'm like, yes, this is absolutely something that's important and must be done. So we brought this to the High School for Recording Arts and recruited students and started doing research and educating and getting our sea legs on in terms of being media professionals.
Wonderful. I know that the first podcast delves into the history of Rondo, which once was a thriving center for the African American culture, business, politics, music. And these students discuss how it has evolved and changed over the years. And with that, I'd love to have Stone, why don't you kick us off in introducing all the high school students that are part of this project.
My name is Stone Williams. I'm a musical artist, and I do video editing for the Voices of Rondo podcast. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Erica Lee. I'm a show host, narrative writer, researcher, and video editor for the Reconnect Rondo Youth Council.
My name is Javier Soto. I'm an editor and a host.
My name is Moises Soto Puente. I am an editor and also host.
And to listen to this wonderful podcast, I highly recommend going to reconnectrondo.com. You can then hit the news tab, or you can go to the YouTube and listen to Reconnect Rondo, or look up Reconnect Rondo, and you can listen to their podcast. To start us off, I think I'm going to have a segment be shared so you can get a taste of the show. And then when we come back, we're going to hear from the students about the research.
People tend to kind of mix up like affordable housing and slums. You know, they kind of group them together, which is not the case at all.
And like you see a lot of gentrification happening in Rondo. Like there are so many families that can't afford housing in Rondo, and they've been living in this neighborhood for generations, and they have to leave and go find somewhere else because they just can't afford to stay here, to live here.
The highway's impact is like truly just generational and has like long-lasting effects, like with housing and with wealth. I think there were studies done to show like that the average wealth in Rondo is just so much lower than in the rest of the city, because
so like Woodbury or something.
Compared, or the suburbs especially. And that was not the case before the highway was built. And so that's like a direct effect here, and it's having impacts decades down the line.
Wonderful work, you all. I was moved by the research that you all had done. There was a video that was part of this that showed about the history and the redlining. Very clear overviews that I think not enough people know about. So what I'd love to do is I will start with Erica this time. And Erica, tell me about the research that you did and some of the key findings or the key pieces of research that you wanted to bring to life.
Yeah, so I did a lot of research, of course, on the community of Rondo, but then also many other predominantly Black communities and historically Black communities across the country. And I feel like that was the most impactful for me, like being able to draw those connections between Rondo and so many other communities across the country. Because whenever you look at things like systemic racism, like there's patterns. It's not just like, oh, there's just this crazy thing happening up here, but it's happening nowhere else. Like there's patterns, and being able to see those patterns and being able to see those connections was really impactful for me.
Javier.
Well, for one, I'm just going to refer to it as the Bloomberg article because that's how we've been talking about it, I guess. But there was this whole article that just went in depth about, places all over the nation that have had similar, problems to Rondo. Like, was it Midtown Miami, Houston, Texas,
New Orleans, Detroit.
Yep. Just
and,
everywhere.
And what happened was the highway came through and just ripped through a strong African-American community and basically decimated the community in terms of being able to stay a whole and be able to impacted business, impacted music, culture, restaurants, life, homes, places that were thriving that with urban renewal, highway went through and destroyed.
Yeah. In almost every case, maybe not through. I know there's some highways that were placed like above neighborhoods. But the important part is that the highway was built there. And that lives...
And it could have gone someplace else.
Anywhere but there is basically the case everywhere. Different alternative routes, stuff like that.
Javier. Moises. We've had Javier. Now we're going to Moises.
In our research, we stumbled upon other organizations that are doing the work of restorative justice in other communities across the nation. We stumbled upon the Claiborne Avenue Alliance. We actually interviewed their co-founder, Amy Stelly, and the insight to that community. You see these parallels, as Erica said. They start off, thriving, have black businesses, black-owned businesses, and then out of nowhere, they just a highway's placed there, despite there being alternative routes. Rondo, there was a northern route that would have went through some
Pierce Butler.
Yeah, that would have went through some railroads, but
and not disturbed any community.
No, but to save 2 minutes, air quotes, they put it through Rondo. In Treme, there was 2 highways that were planned, one going through the French Quarter and one going through the Treme community. But the people in the French Quarter protested against it. They lobbied against it, and they're successful, right? Rightfully so, right? You don't want a highway going through a community.
Right.
But in Treme...
Any community, though.
Right, any community. In Treme, they did the same thing. But the government didn't listen to them. And the difference, Treme was predominantly black, French Quarter, predominantly white.
It's a heartache to start seeing those connections and to start seeing it being a systemic and not just in the St. Paul area.
It's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
It's a pattern, intentional pattern that's going around across this country.
Stone, I know you joined after the first research projects that were going on. What impressed you about the research that drew you in?
That they were performing, is what you're saying? Or
The
just
research that they had created, implemented to do the first show.
I think it was really impressive just seeing that most of it, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, is completely student-led. It's all student-led. Yeah, so just seeing you guys, especially since me and Javi have known each other for a long time, seeing him be so passionate and driven on this specific topic is something that's like really new to me, at least, just from how long we've known each other. So like the fact that you guys put this all together by yourselves and went out there and seeked like people and places to like put down on your research, and like the percentages, the quotes that you mentioned as well, Moises, just what you said. I'm incredibly impressed, and I'm so glad to now be a part of it.
I want to add to what Stone said with that, because sometimes when young people begin projects like this that are very social justice oriented, political motivated, etc., the opposition or the cynics out there say, "Oh, that's just that organization, that's just that lobbying group, that special interest group. They're just putting words in these young people's mouths. They're just making them puppets." That is not the case here. Every word you hear on the podcast, every choice that is made in the podcast is made by these young people. The teachers, myself, Haben, Lane, all of us, the facilitators that work with the students, we give parameters, we step back, they manage the whole show themselves.
It's beautiful.
I would like to mention, we did have someone who was trying to feed us words for a little while there. Needless to say, that's not the case anymore.
I love it.
So,
well, there's always challenges in any organizational effort, and it's great when the podcast can be able to have your voice, and that you claim it as your voice, and you claim it for what you want to have be out there that represents the youth councils. Reconnecting Rondo. And with that, we're going to need to go to break. Great thoughts, great. And more on a trip, some research that they did that's very exciting that I look forward to have you all learn about in our next segment. We'll be right back after a few commercials. Stay with us. Welcome back to Connections Radio Show, where we talk about ideas that matter. I'm Lori Fitz, your host, and we have got the Reconnect Rondo Youth Council, and they are talking about their new podcast series, Voices of Rondo. It highlights youth voices on the history of systemic racism in American transportation policy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the students just go around and introduce themselves, and we're going to start with Javier.
My name is Javier, a student at High School for Recording Arts.
My name is Moises. I am a student at Brooklyn Center High School.
And we've got Stone.
Hey y'all, it's Stone. I'm a musical producer and a video editor for the Voices of Rondo podcast, and I go to HSRA.
Hi, everybody. My name is Erica Lee. I'm a senior at Brooklyn Center High School.
And what they have been researching and working on for their podcast is what happened in Rondo. If you do not know, despite facing significant challenges, including the construction of the Interstate 94 during the 1950s and 60s that destroyed 300 Black-owned businesses and displaced thousands of residents, the Rondo community has been preserved. It remains an essential and vibrant African-American neighborhood, even though the I-94 highway cut through Rondo's heart and left a scar in the landscape and the community that has yet to heal fully. I must give credit to Tim Hunt, who has given us this wonderful press release that I share that with you all about. We have been hearing the young people's voices. In our last segment, we were talking about how this has not just happened in St. Paul, it's all over the country. And Erica had some more thoughts on that I'd like to have her start us off on this segment.
Right. So Moises talked about the organization that we found through research called the Claiborne Avenue Alliance in Treme. And so just like with Rondo, Treme is a historically Black community who had an interstate ran right through it. And so I thought it was interesting being able to draw the connections between organizations such as the Claiborne Avenue Alliance and Reconnect Rondo. Like the Claiborne Avenue Alliance, their goal is to completely get rid of the highway in Treme and replace it with the boulevard that used to be there. And with Reconnect Rondo in Rondo, their solution is to build a land bridge over the part of 94 in their community. And so I just thought it was really interesting, like researching and figuring out about how each community has different solutions to solve the same problem. And I feel like that kind of just shows you how like there's not really like a one-size-fits-all solution. Like each community has their own way to solve problems. So that was interesting to me.
And you all took a trip. Well, not all of you, but some of you here took a trip to do some more research. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to have Javier tell me, where did you go? What did you do?
So I think, when was it, like last April? Mm-hmm. We went to Clarksdale, Mississippi. And basically, we were there for a blues camp, but we got a lot of good footage of this place called the Shack Up Inn, which is basically like former sharecropper quarters, which had been turned into rental spaces. You know, you could have just like an old, like I said, sharecropper home with fully furnished, like Wi-Fi, air conditioning, stuff like that. Probably 100 feet away from a cotton field.
How did that make you feel, Stone?
It wasn't a fun experience, I'll say the least. I mean, like, it was great because I knew I had Scott and Javi by my side, but seeing stuff of the such and just like understanding how hot these metal shacks are inside and watching people use them for profit without like any showing of what the actual history is behind them. They just think they're cool looking things in a field of cotton. It's like, it's disgusting. I was disappointed. It was really insight onto how that worked because you can hear about it, but when you're up north and you don't get to see, and you're in a city, you don't get to see as much of that. So I was really kind of like separated from the actual facts until I got to see it with my own eyes and see people staying there.
So it sounds like there was almost like two reactions. One reaction was, this is where people stayed. This is where people lived. This is how they were treated. And then the exploitive second part.
Yes.
Now it's being turned into like a Disneyland.
Exactly.
Of, you know, this is where you can go pretend and, you know, relive the experience in a disrespectful way.
Yes, 100%.
Erica, what were some of your thoughts when you were there?
I mean, I just thought that was one of the most like utterly disrespectful things I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, I just feel like it would only be right if this was Black owned and a place for the Black community to go and mourn about our ancestors' lives. And so I thought it was really disgusting, like Stone said, about like how it was white owned, it was used for profit. Like, they just treated like this is not a big deal when it really is.
Mm-hmm. I feel like if maybe they would have, even if it, say that it was still white owned, even if they had turned it into like a museum or just a place of recognition in any form, that would have just like made things so much better.
I know in Memphis, I was very moved going to the Civil Rights Museum where you could see the Lorraine Motel. You could see where Martin Luther King Jr. had been killed, where you could sit on a bus and feel like what it was like and hear the voices and how they created the reenactment so that you could be empowered by the education and connect in a powerful way versus hearing about, a zoomed up, air conditioned Wi-Fi, pretend for, like almost like a Halloween.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like, I personally don't believe that we should just completely remove them because they're important parts of history. And I think that's something to be witnessed and learned from, but definitely not exploited for like a cool, like attraction. Or look, you can stay in these shacks that slaves were forced into. It's like, it's just a sad thing that people are using it in the specific way that they're using it. Like Javi said, it can really be a memorial or a museum way for people to learn.
And how much different is that than, dressing up for plantations and the plantation parties?
Yeah.
It has that same sort of, ugliness.
I just wonder, like, what in their heads made them think that was okay? Like, what was their train of thought there?
My question is the people who stay there. Like,
Why?
Which we saw people staying there. That's for
all of them were white people.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think any person of color would touch
Why
that. with
would you? Why would you want to? Yeah, no, for sure.
There's just zero, like, real purpose for them to be making those rental spaces.
It was just an uncomforting sight.
It's
for sure.
definitely, and there was like a food court and everything.
Yeah.
Wasn't there like a bar there too?
Yeah, there was a bar, a food court. They had like a little, like, God, what do you call it? Not like a garden, but like a little cafeteria, I guess.
Yeah.
It was just sickening, man.
You know what's significant, the real tragedy dichotomy of that experience is that it sits on the original site of the Hobson plantation, which is where the first mechanized cotton harvesting, the first mechanized cotton combine that could plant, harvest, bale, etc., was used, which spawned the Great Migration.
I completely.
And now it's a juke joint.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it would have been something if they set up that business and no one attended, like no one stayed there, because like it's disgusting, right? Like why would you stay in those? But people actually go there and stay in those rental businesses, which make it even more disgusting.
I forgot. Also, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was this guy who said that he owns one of the buildings, right?
Yeah,
like he just lives there.
Yeah.
Question for you. Is this going to be part of your next segment? Your next podcast is going to be talking about this experience going down?
Yeah. The first podcast, I believe, ends on a somewhat of a cliffhanger.
Yeah. Because it showed
showing the video.
It did show the video. It showed footage, which was just like horrific. So please go to listen and watch because it's a great setup for the next. But I thought that at the end of the segment, at the end of the podcast, that you were talking about this being what was going to be the topic of your next. You want to give us any other quick preview of what that looks like?
In our next episode, we go much more in depth than we can go in, right now, obviously. But I don't want to say too much other than just go watch it.
All right. And for folks that want to be able to go watch the first segment, you can go to reconnectrondo.com, and then there's a news tab, or you can just go to YouTube and type in Reconnect Rondo. I'm going to have you all stay with us. We have to go to a few commercials, a quick break, but we're going to have one more segment to talk about what's the future look like? What's the Youth Council going to be doing? What's up? What does this all mean, and how does this tie to a land bridge coming up and all sorts of good things with Reconnect Rondo? So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Connections Radio Show, where we talk about ideas that matter. And we have had just an extraordinary show today with some extraordinary students who've been working hard to share the message of reconnecting Rondo, the history, the challenges throughout our country with systemic racism that have impacted communities of color. Want to thank all the various people that have been involved with this. Scott Harold, CEO and founder of Rock the Cause. It's been a heart journey for him. Tim Hunt, who has recently joined as their marketing and PR. We've got Moises Puente, who has been a host and narrative writer, video editor. Thank you for all the work you do as well. Erica, Brooklyn Center High School show host, narrative writer, video editor. Javier Soto, who is a high school for recording arts, is with that high school, is also a show host, narrative writer. Stone Williams, you've recently joined. You work with the audio and video editing, music composer, but not speaking on air and observing is our friend Claire Nybeck. We're going to do a special call out to Claire. Claire has been a camera operator, video editor, audio editor, researcher, narrative writer, and as this group calls you, you are the thunder behind the scenes. So thank you very much. And Rick Bernardo, big thanks. Rick helped make this happen. He has worked with our both Tim and Scott to help bring this together. And with that, I'm going to have Scott and Tim say a few words, and then after they say a few words, I'd love to have the students share with us a call to action. How should we be thinking about this? Not only do I want you to listen to their podcast, which is on reconnectrondo.com, hit the news, or go to YouTube, Reconnect Rondo. I'm going to ask them to ask you to be thinking about what you can do to make a difference. But I'll start with Scott.
I think with this project, this podcast will be an ongoing series with these young people. It is workforce development. The students can work up to 20 hours a week and earn $16 an hour. And everything that you're hearing right now that we're discussing, these are all transferable job skills. One of the things that's great about Reconnect Rondo is that it is about restoring economic access to historically marginalized populations of people. And this program that we have with these interns really embodies that in so many ways. And so I believe full-heartedly, being the vocational discovery director at High School for Recording Arts, that there needs to be more meaningful youth workforce development out there. There's been so many programs like SHOP, Arts, et cetera, that get cut from the programs in favor of this fear that we're going to be dominated by another nation in math and science, et cetera, when there are real career skills that young people can make a living at that could be taught in our schools and our communities and programs.
Big shout out to HSRA, High School for the Recording Arts.
Thank you.
I will just second everything Scotty said because, working for Reconnect Rondo, this is more than a bridge. Right? We are not only trying to restore and reconnect a community physically, but we're trying to reconnect the social, the economic, the cultural fabric of what was once a vibrant African American neighborhood. So in doing that, the youth voices are so critical. Right? So when you think about all the big things that have happened relating to whether it's civil rights or any movement, the youth have been a critical voice in that. And so this project is no different. And so I'm so grateful that we have such vibrant, intelligent, excited, passionate youth to be a part of this project.
And with that, Stone, what would you like the audience to be thinking about?
One thing I especially want is, this is a call out to people specifically living in Rondo. I just want more conversation about everything that's going on and what changes you'd make to your community, what you see happening in your community, because I know a lot of people who live there and a lot of people who don't exactly understand everything happening, the gentrification that's going on, what even the land bridge was. This is my first experience with plenty of these changes and the oppression and history behind Rondo. So I just want people from Rondo to specifically just listen to what we have to say, maybe have a conversation with your children about it and let them know the history that we've experienced.
Erica.
So I think the biggest call to action that I have for the audience is just to get out there and educate yourself. I feel like a lot of people have a misconception that problems that affect Black and brown people are only for Black and brown people to learn, but everybody's got to learn. In order to solve a problem, you first have to acknowledge it. So I just say get out there, read a book, and start learning.
Javier.
I kind of want to reiterate what Erica said. Please, if you're from Rondo, if you're from Brooklyn Center, if you're from wherever, if you're from Timbuktu, it doesn't matter. Please just educate yourself about where you live, about your community, and about what matters to you and, the people around you.
I'm gonna have to agree with both of y'all. Get out there, research. Look at me. Before joining this program, I didn't know any of this. So, and that says a lot about the education system. So just read, research. Do your own research. Don't be reliant on someone else for information. Just seek it out. You have to seek it out.
And be open to participating.
Yeah.
If I could give everyone one point, the Rondo Commemorative Plaza is in the heartbeat of the Rondo neighborhood, is a phenomenal first stop to understanding the history of Rondo. It's run by Mr. Anderson, who is the founder of, if you know, Rondo Days. So a wealth of knowledge exists in Rondo. So the information is there. It's free to go. So the Rondo Commemorative Plaza is a great place to go to get some education.
And I'm going to plug Rondo Days. I love Rondo Days as well. It's a great experience to celebrate in the summer. So Connect, which is all about our Connections radio show. And I want to do a deep thank you to each of you coming here, sharing about the podcast, sharing about your vision, sharing about making the world a better place, and encouraging the audience to be part of it, to connect, to support, to do something. So I also think you should go down and, visit a restaurant and go enjoy yourself. There's a lot of fun things to do.
So many local businesses in Rondo that I've gotten to see. Just like, even if they look from the outside like, oh, it's kind of like a sketchy thing. It's like they have beautiful foods and culture. We have so many different cultures here. I mean, like, it's wonderful.
It's celebration.
Javi and I went to Best Steakhouse.
Oh, my God.
Yes!
The food in Rondo is so amazing.
The fried rice spot that we went to? Oh, my
fried
God.
rice spot. It's a Thai place, right?
Yeah, it's a Thai,
That's
and there's
the
a
best
Vietnamese
fried
space,
rice
right?
place.
Dude.
Oh, well, I'm gonna have to go there.
Yes, please come with us. Fantastic food, fantastic businesses.
Fantastic people.
Fantastic people. Yeah.
I know we're running out of time, but just as I'm hearing everyone talk, another thing that I am super excited about that the Rondo, what's good for Rondo is good for Minnesota. So it's about, we're talking about Rondo, but really this project, this podcast, it's what's good for Minnesota. It's what's good for everybody. You can see the connections between New Orleans, Mississippi. So this is not a project in a vacuum, right? It's a project that matters to so much that's happening in Minnesota and this nation. So,
and I'm formally inviting you all back after your next podcast. All right, I want to hear more. All right, thanks so much for listening to Connections Radio Show. We're so glad that you're a part of what we do and making a difference.